So second half of this evening is going to focus on carbon footprints. I'm going to give you yet another quick overview of some background knowledge, and then you'll have time to discuss around carbon footprints and your findings and your thoughts amongst yourselves. So background information on carbon footprints. Obviously, we've already mentioned greenhouse gases and greenhouse effect earlier in this session. So what is the greenhouse effect? Pretty basic. We get sun arriving on Earth, and heat is supposed to be emitted back into space, but greenhouse gas emissions are basically keeping the heat on Earth. So as a greenhouse would. You get light through a greenhouse roof, and the heat stays in the greenhouse. It can't escape. So a similar effect happens with the greenhouse gases when we've got too many greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. So usually there would be a balance that the same amount of energy is emitted away from Earth as arrives at Earth. But because we get this effect with our increased greenhouse gas emissions, the Earth is getting warmer and warmer.
Sorry, can I just...
What are the greenhouse...
Interrupt you there for a second, Annie. Just ask, are other people, are you seeing the diagram on the slide, or you're seeing a blank? Yeah.
It flashes up really quickly, but then moves on.
Yeah. Okay, because
the last one was only on screen for a few moments.
There we go.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that what we... Okay. Yeah, sorry, it showed up fine on my... Yeah. Okay, so really basic diagram of greenhouse effect, and then an overview of the different greenhouse gases. So we mentioned the Kyoto Protocol earlier, and these are basically the 6 gases that were identified in the protocol, of which CO2 and methane are the major ones. So again, really basic, but just so you know, we all are on the same page of what we're talking about. So nearly everything that we humans do creates greenhouse gas. One greenhouse gas or another. Might be CO2, it might be methane, it might be one of the greenhouse gases. So the more we produce, the more dense the layers of the atmosphere are getting. You can imagine that as adding blankets to your bed. So the cozier our climate gets, the warmer it gets. So at the moment, we're adding layer upon layer upon our Earth. And the problem is we are now adding layers so quickly as never before. And the Earth is starting to get too hot and overheat. And as we've seen earlier, it's taking a long time to take the layers off again. So what we need to manage is how much CO2, how much carbon we emit into the atmosphere. So the more carbon we add to the atmosphere, the hotter our climate. And scientists are then able to calculate how much our climate is going to warm depending on the amount of greenhouse gases that we add. So this graph shows you, estimate roughly on the estimate of how much CO2 we're emitting into the atmosphere, how warm is it going to get? We've seen a different version of this graph earlier. So the more CO2, the hotter it's going to be. If we want to stay within the 2 degrees, which we all know we should and we must, we need to strategically reduce our carbon emissions. And we need to do this now. This is why so much attention is paid to carbon footprints and also the term CO2 budget. So you might have heard about carbon budgets. Our budget is basically the amount of greenhouse gases that we can produce until our climate reaches a tipping point and we can't reverse the catastrophic effects. So that's basically how you can imagine it. That is the budget that we are allowed to spend to add to our atmosphere. The University of Leeds has looked at different areas in the UK in regards to their carbon budgets, and Cambridge and Peterborough is so the area where we live is doing pretty badly. So we don't have a lot of allowance left, and at our current level of emission, we would only have 6 years left. If we stuck to what we do now, we would only have 6 years left, and then we've exhausted our budget. We've spent all of the budget and nothing is left for future generations to spend. So it is a climate emergency. And so when we talk about budget, how are we spending this budget at the moment? Which is where we come into the area of carbon footprints. So this is an overview of what we spend it at the moment. So the UK resident creates as much CO2 just for transport, so driving a car, flying, and so on, than an average resident of China produces with everything they do. So if you compare how much we spend, this is really significantly more than other people in the world do. So imagine there are 7 billion humans in the world, and if all of them lived like we do in the West, our carbon budget would virtually be spent in a day. So we have to reduce our spending if we want to keep some of the budget safe for the future, for future generations. And also, and that's where climate justice comes into effect, we also want to spend it out more fairly across the world. So how much greenhouse gases do we produce personally? That is what we calculate in our carbon footprint. That is called a carbon footprint. And now we know, now we've seen why we need to watch our carbon budget and watch our carbon footprint. We can have a look at what we actually spend it on. And a personal carbon footprint can be typically divided into 4 areas. That is food, energy, transport, and shopping. A carbon footprint calculator can then help you to estimate those emissions in these 4 areas. So you should all have had a chance to look at our carbon footprint calculator. We have created our very own calculator at Cambridge Carbon Footprint, and we launched it along with the Cambridge Climate Change Charter last year. It asks a series of questions around your home, around transport, food, and shopping habits. And then we've worked with a team of experts from across Cambridge to help us create the calculations behind the calculator. And it takes your information and generates an estimate of your personal carbon footprint. So by the end of the questionnaire, you get a result looking something like this.
Annie,
and yeah,
I think we're still not seeing
show again.
Images. Yeah, and I hope we haven't missed too many things. I mean, we will be sharing the slides afterwards, so if there was anything that you missed and you'd like to go back and revisit, we will have the all of the slides available.
Sorry about that. I see it fine. Sorry. Do you see the results on screen? Yeah, great. So when you filled in the carbon footprint calculator, you receive the results at the end, and hopefully most of you will have been able to download your results to have them ready now. Our calculator also provides an overview of the different areas, so you know which one is the area that you generate most emissions in. And what we also provide in ours, I hope you see the page with the goals. So if we all wanted to reach net zero by 2050,
we're still not seeing it, Annie.
Okay, I'll jump over again. Yeah, great. It basically means that we have to step down our emissions every year. And that's what we try to indicate with with these goals. You should really aim to reduce your emissions by next year, and then have a more ambitious goal for within the next 10 years. On our website, you will also find some advice around taking action. So that was done through the Cambridge Climate Change Charter last year. That offers a set of suggested actions that you might want to take. Again, okay. To reduce your carbon emissions. If you click through our website, you'll get that list, and it also indicates which actions are more effective, so get more stars than other actions.